Okay, Jens. Nice to have you back for part 2. I would like us to start with the very name body-mind centering. What do you feel when you say body-mind? What is body-mind to you, body-mind centering?
Good question. So the term body-mind is really being used widely. Since about the time when BMC also came on the surface or appeared, the term body-mind became popular and widely used. But so in terms of if you want to speak about this method, then it's really, it needs the centering as part of the name. So the short is BMC, and body-mind is written as one word. A common theme of humanistic psychology is to speak and discuss and work on dilemma of having a split between the body and the mind. And body-mind centering, I think, is wants to do the fusing, the bringing together of body-mind. So it's really talking about and working with how they can become one and work as a union. But the dilemma is in the name, because it still doesn't say wholeness centering or something, as it says body-mind centering. Then there are a few discussions about that in BMC. The thinking isn't, or the perception, the consciousness isn't thought to be in a mental place, like in the brain or in the thinking, that the consciousness is not one certain thing, but consciousness is many. And body-mind centering speaks also of centering the consciousness in different places. So where the attention goes and the awareness is, the activity is, the centering can be, or the body-mind can be. So the consciousness is traveling and is an accumulation of all the different places we have and live in, as it is a mobile thought or principle. So it's not a certain location. That's a kind of trying to explain why this word, why this name. To my understanding, the name came about after Bonnie had been working together with Len for a while in creating this way of working. And I remember a story, and I may be wrong, or it may have been told wrong, that they asked a Zen teacher they were working with at the time in Japan, I believe, what they should call it. And he said he used this name. There may be other stories, but I think the content is more of what I said before. It's a oneness, but the consciousness is not at one certain place, and it's mobile and movable.
Mm. So the centering part would imply the directing of the consciousness.
Not sure. I don't know if there really is an answer like that.
Mm-hmm.
There is, but maybe the activity of the work is to center the body and mind, to bring them together into oneness. Mm-hmm. And that maybe implies going to different places in the human realm of the different body systems or forces or activities or functions. So it uses the work is playing with the many possibilities of actively practicing body-mind centering.
You once used the definition. You said that body mind centering is like a light that we point into a certain direction.
I think I would rather say that awareness is a kind of a light that is
Yes.
pointing
Yes.
to different, yes, parts of us or places in us. That in itself isn't body mind centering. That anybody can do that,
Right.
and
Yeah.
maybe that's also the complexity of the word or the method is the techniques of what BMC make up, what you learn in the training or what the practice is going to certain bones or the movement between the ulna and the humerus, the relationship between parts of the body with each other, and the exchange of gases into fluids and into cells and out of it. None of that is body mind centering.
Right.
So and body mind centering has this copyright, which drives a lot of people crazy because I think that it's common ownership. It belongs to people. But the thing is that putting it all together and together with the work, the conscious embodiment of the embryological development and developmental work of movement patterns, reflexes, and ontogenetic development, and the work with the body systems. All together, that makes up body mind centering. And in my eye, only that made up method of all its parts can be copyrighted.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you cannot copyright, feel your arm and feel how it moves.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do that. And it's common ownership. But it's the method, it goes deeper, and it only really comes to light when you put it all together. And that's why there is a sense of certifying people and also copywriting the method, because it needs that depth of study to really understand
Mm-hmm.
how the complexity and the simplicity in it. It's always been important to me to make that distinction between the parts and the whole. And the whole is what can be copyrighted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel in a way the method itself deals with this playing with between the parts and the whole. Because in a way I feel what we're doing is we are taking the whole and taking it into the parts and then putting it all together. But somehow this whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Oh, yeah, I mean that's no news to on any level in life. So it happens to everybody in terms of like you look into the sky, you sit somewhere, you have an experience of how you sit, and what you eat and digest, and how you go about your work, and all of that is also bigger than its parts. But then using a method of looking into what makes what makes us up, what do we consist of, how do we function, how do we work, how do we interact. That's more than just living.
Mm-hmm.
And not that it's that there's more worth in just in dissecting it than in just living. If there is, I think if you could just be living and not worry about anything, then you'll be fine.
Right.
But if you start to have, for some reason, interest and want to look into it in a deeper way and make sense of, on many levels, on pains or just interest in movement qualities or dancing, then there's a lot in BMC that can be helpful with.
Mm-hmm. I also felt that this deep study of myself enabled my own being. When you say we can just be, but after the deep study, it's like my being is a little bit wider. I used to experience life to a certain extent, but then after I looked more deep into it, it becomes more wide, more rich.
Yeah, for sure. I use the word. I never tried. I never looked up if the term is the same in English, but in German is Galvanisation, galvanization. It's like metals are put into a bath and become clearer, shinier, and are covered with zinc, or I don't know what they else can be covered with. Then they're more resistant and can do their job better. And my experience is when entering a body system, for instance, let's say the inner organs, that after doing the different exercises and techniques for all the different organs, afterwards the organ system makes more sense, is more shiny, and is clearer, and has an inner and maybe also outer radiance. That is, it can be seen in people, but it also is as you describe, it makes the experience of breathing, for instance, deeper, clearer, sharper.
Right. What was once unknown becomes known, and where there's confusion, there's a little bit more clarity.
Yes, and it's also more. It's even more wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is special anyway that we are breathed by this air. But then to have looked at it and to realize that it's like, it really is happening. You know, you can read about things and just have it as a mental understanding, but to be in the experience makes it, well, experiential.
Right.
And that's to be in it and in the experience of being alive is worth it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So you mentioned in the first part of the interview how one of the elements that sparked people's interest in somatic practices was raising of the ecological awareness. Can you give us some thoughts about that, expand on that? I would like us to touch upon these different worldviews in one where we are integral part of nature against the mechanical concept where man is somehow removed from nature and uses it for its own purposes, and how that manifests in our own perception of our own bodies and movement. Because I feel in a way BMC activates this deeply organic feeling of being part of nature.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The reality of that we are actually a living being, and in that we are part of the living organisms on the planet, and in the planet, part of the planet. To go for that experience, that makes it more shiny and more you're more aware of it, and you experience it more. There was in one final project from one of our practitioner programs, I think her name was Sandy, French woman, and she's a studied geologist. Part of this project was that she explained to us that all the particles that we are made of are the same as the ground, as the trees, as other animals. You know, it's not like an idea, it's like a physical reality that we're part of it. That is fascinating. So a great exhibition of an artist who had this huge hall full of paper, small typed paper full of, and this whole hall, a really big hall, like 50 meters long and 20 meters high, and all the walls were plastered with these A4 sheets typed full that was her genetic code. And then on the wall, there were little tubes of copper and silver and gold and carbon and all the parts, all the particles that the body is made of. It was great to see it as an art piece, but to have the experiences, to put those thoughts together with true. I breathe it in. If you remember, I in the breathing, cellular breathing, I use this term, the carrot pulls on the sky.
What does that mean? I don't remember that.
It means like whatever we ate, like carrots, has formed the tissue of this body. And so the cells are made up of carrots, and what else we ate. And the cells have a longing or a movement that they want to stay alive. And so they pull on the blood, which is connected with the bloodstream, which is connected to the lungs, which is connected to the nose, which is connected to the air around us, which is the sky. So the cells in us actually, by needing to breathe and get food and oxygen, they pull on the sky. It's a fact. It's not like a miracle, or the fact is a miracle.
Yeah, I feel the important aspect of it all is respect towards life that emerges, and hopefully also a sense of humbleness.
And this makes me think, one of the basic principles in the developmental process is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be comfortable to be able to do anything, but in particular to develop and to learn, because only out of comfort you develop an interest. And so when you experience comfort and you witness discomfort, then you automatically want to connect with it and share that comfort is possible, available, or can be experienced. And that's where the hands-on work of BMC comes in, that you learn to touch from a neutral place of just being with someone, first of all with yourself, but then also with someone, and to use your hands to experience the going towards comfort together in a very simple, hardly any technical doing, but more in the sharing of being. And it's a powerful and also simple way of meeting.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned touch, I had a question related to touch and sound and vocalizing as these two important aspects of the method and of human life. Can you talk about the role of sound in the exploration of our consciousness? I'm always fascinated by the different possibilities and abilities of a human body to produce sound, and how every part of us has its own sound in a way.
I think that the human voice, the way we produce sound and articulate language, says a lot about how we are, how we are in the world, what we have in us, and from what place and with what intention we are in the world. In terms of the BMC, as part of the work in the later program, the practitioner program, we look into voice production, sound production from the voice, vocal mechanism and sound production, which isn't anything else but breathing and using the esophagus with the neck and the mouth and all the musculature. It's totally complex and fascinating in its complexity and the skill that it needs to say a word and mean the said word. What's needed to be able to do that is very complex. We're so used to it. Well, it'd be great if there was more awareness of how that happens, what effects that has, and what you can do with it. Learning about sound, I mean, there is using the simple resonance of sound, the way the voice is creating a tone, but is creating the tone inside the body.
Mm.
That is a big part of how we perceive voice, our own voice. We have a feedback mechanism, a sensory mechanism that is huge and is all over the body. So we hear our own voice as we speak, but we also feel it throughout our body. And we can use this resonance of the body, the way the sound travels inside, to actually get into touch and awaken and sound into each little nook, corner, part of the most minute places in the body. When you have done that, then each part of the body is articulated through sound. And so that when you speak, your mind expresses in what you want to say in more exactly that way that you want to say it. So it's a schooling of the articulation after you have really integrated all the parts of the body to be serving as a vocalizing support.
Mm.
In then teaching the systems or the different places of the body, that can be a way of communicating with students or whoever you talk to, of speaking from a place that you want to teach and help other people go to in their own bodies. So it's a slightly, you know that you are using this particular place of resonance or part in the body, and it makes it easier for others to find it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a method in the teacher's vocabulary to not be mentally speaking about breathing, but to be speaking about breathing. So the sound has the depth of the content in it. You can hear where the voice comes from,
Right.
and what's behind it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one of the most amazing things for me, and how
Me too. It's one of the favorite.
in our bodies, how as we go down towards the earth, we go into the deeper tones and frequencies, and then as we rise up, goes to the higher pitch. And the way to transmit that, so that is also one thing I want us to talk about. This term, the mind of the room. I think it relates to this, right? It's about this resonance that we can tune into and in a way start activating parts of us just by getting in tune with the resonance. Would you say that the mind of the room is connected to what you were saying now with the voice?
Yes, sure. Mind of the room, I think, is a term, I believe, Bonnie formed. In BMC, it means that maybe it's easier to say it like this. If you are if you're working with a group of people and you're working on explaining some kind of detail in sensing the ground, and people are or relating to the ground, and the way people relate in their bodies to this or that, or the ground. And then if everybody in the room has registered the information and has arrived in a certain way of relating to the ground, the atmosphere in the room changes in a certain way. That is called the mind of the room changes. It's like everybody's done with somehow arriving at a certain place, and then it's very complex what happens there if you want to take it apart. But this it's simple in the the word could be atmosphere change. The room feels different. And that's a continuous thing that happens many times during one class, of an hour and a half or so, or two. It happens a number of times, not just one time. Depends on what you do. You become, after people have mentioned this change of the mind of the room, in the beginning, I remember it being like, what, and then when you have more experience with it, it's like a knife sharp experience. It's not so, oh yeah, maybe. It's like you, boom. It's really clear.
I don't know, when you say that, it makes me think like us as human beings, we are kind of like sensors.
Oh, totally. What becomes really clear is the changing of the mind of the room. That you, maybe that implies the other, but that when it changes, you really you notice it. Something is really different. From the outside, if somebody hasn't done this, and you see a group of people, you barely notice something, maybe some very slight. When you're in it, it becomes stronger and stronger. That's what I wanted to say. It's when it's shifting.
Like someone turns the dial, sets the frequency.
On the keyboard, yeah.
So what is the part of us that perceives that feels that?
Everything. It's like, physically, it's in everything. If you look at muscles and the muscle cells and the different aspects of muscle cells, there are some writings about muscles being mostly a sensory organ, which is totally contra the public perception. Muscles is about movement. But when you go into musculature, then muscles really sense all the time the length, the intensity, the vibration in the room, the relationship of distance, the articulation of people next to you. Is like, and so vibration goes through cells, goes through fluids. We live in cells and fluids. It's everywhere. We are a radiating and a perceiving antenna and a sender. We radiate something as well. Communicator. I think what's in that is that we are also responsible.
In what way? What do you mean?
Well, somehow I feel like we just live our lives and we about, and this is how we are. We take it for granted how we are. And I think through this work, you also come to be more aware of how you send and perceive.
Right.
And that is not like to self-monitor too closely, because that can drive you nuts. I've called that a body idiot. Feel like constantly controlling or monitoring what you're doing, how you're breathing, how you're standing, how you're policing yourself. But just to be aware of is more simple. Just to be aware of how and what you send, and how you perceive, and how you filter what you perceive into thoughts and concepts. Complex.
It is. In BMC, we don't talk much about stuff like energy. Do you feel that is an intentional thing? And what is the reason for it?
I mean, to talk about energy it can become vague easily. But if you talk about the energy in the intensity of a muscle contraction, or the energy of what? In the time when I started to look around in this field of body awareness and self-development, I suppose, in the early 80s, energy was like, oh, you have such an incredible energy. So and so, she really has bad energy. You know, what is that? You're basically saying something without saying it. It's a kind of laziness to be just saying energy. But that energy is in BMC key, not so much prana, but key was more what Bonnie also researched because of their interest in sitting meditation and Aikido and Katsuin Endo. The key as a living energy, life force, or the force behind the force, was kind of a leading light. But then Bonnie wouldn't just talk about ki, but she would look into which part of the anatomical function, or so that's physiology, anatomy or physiology of the body could hold the quality of ki or chi in it. And I remember that at one point that research led to that the sensory part of muscle function could be expressing chi or ki in it, that it would be in the way it would hold a person's power. In studying the muscles in depth, you find a place of that with less force, you have more energy. You can execute a movement with more force by using less energy. And so that was after looking into how can we find chi in the muscle function. And also in the research on the autonomic nervous system, there was a lot of chi, looking for chi or ki in that. And also in the breathing practices, in the embryological breathing. If you remember that breathing into the lesser momentum,
yeah,
was kind of like mixing or fusing the physical with the occult with the more magical or mysterious art of looking at things. And I mean, if you just go deeper into your experience of being physical, it gets bloody outrageous. If you go deeply into your breathing, it's like a medicine that you have and carry in you. That's available. It's not illegal or anything. So I think there's just more carefulness with using the term energy than using it too easily.
Right.
That's my understanding. It's not prohibited or anything, but it makes it.
I was saying that I feel these certain elements are veiled and they're not explicitly in the teachings of the practice, but they kind of emerged by themselves through the experience.
I think there is something that people come to a BMC class or training because they want to learn something. That may be something that they heard or that they read or that they experienced by listening to a tape or looked at a video, watched a presentation of some sort. I think to communicate and bring across the experience that you share, it carries in it that leading towards some way of discovery is what, how we look at it from both sides, student or teacher. You want something, I'll try and communicate it. The thing in the definition of teacher is often much more one in BMC, is one of much more sharing, and then teaching top down. It's not like frontal school teaching, but it's bringing experience into the room and leading people into finding their way to experience their own way with whatever. And that's quite different from a top-down teaching of you need to learn this. It's like, so we often speak about there's a treaded path, and one can, if you've treaded it and you've treaded it in and out, then you can show people the way to also go in and out to an experience. And in this way, it's more like a guide or taken by the hand and sharing than teaching and giving notes. Quite different.
Right. In a way, it's a constant creative process where you don't give something to the participant, but the participant has to find it.
Right. That's it can have very different appearances. Sometimes you give so much that it's overwhelming.
Right.
You kind of wash the hair. You don't think you know how to get somewhere. You learn with experience.
I only have one more question that I didn't ask you from the paper. Let's see how it sits with you. It says, what are the benefits of organic spontaneous movement which arises from cellular consciousness in the moment? I noticed in many body practices a tendency to be goal-oriented or practicing a specific movement more like a mechanical approach. Do this, do that. And I feel the opposite is just letting the movement emerge in the moment from the cells as a spontaneous, authentic expression.
I mean, are you relating to Katsugen Endo or?
Not just Katsugen Undo, but I feel when we go into any kind of exploration, when we go into the tissue, I feel what emerges is a spontaneous expression that can really surprise us. We don't really know where it will go.
Well, I think that's opening a door in one's own repertoire, movement repertoire, nervous system capacity when you experience something new in your own way of moving. We learn, and at some point we think we're done learning, and then we are who we are, and this is how we function, this is how we move, and this is how we go. When you rattle that door and you go and learn moving differently and starting it from inside out or cellular upward in the body mind, then you are due to experience other possibilities, other parts of yourself that you haven't noticed before or uncovered. And I think that's a lot of the work, what we do, unveiling the possibilities. And it's not like the teacher knows what it should be looking like in you.
Exactly.
As a student or so. So it's really like, come and see what it means to you. Hopefully it's something nice. Usually, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's more than that. It's not just a gimmick. It's a practice of widening your experience in the world. And emptying the glass so that it can be filled again. So it's not like running around with a full glass and knowing everything. Sometimes difficult with when people come with too much of an idea, they can't really open themselves to a process, and it's more difficult for them. And often they make it more difficult for the others as well, because they pound that they know it and defend it, and so it's a practice to
Unlearn.
To unlearn, but also to be humble and allow that you don't know everything.
Right.
Uh,
Beautiful, Jens. Thank you. Thank you for your
look
time.
forward to next
Thank you
time.
for your words. Sorry?
Look forward to next time.
Exactly. I was waiting for you to say that. We're gonna make it a series.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, because it's good to think these thoughts and see what concepts or ideas lie in it, and that's great. Thank you.